Ever since I started my Composing in Real-Time series, one of the most frequent questions I get asked by far is, what is this thing? This is the Tech Control MIDI breath controller. They are not paying me to talk about this product whatsoever. I don't get percentage, nothing. They don't do affiliate stuff, so I'm just gonna endorse them on my own. In this video, I'd like to explain why I use this, how I use it, and maybe some of the advantages or disadvantages compared to using a standard MIDI fader controlling MIDI CC data. If you are a nerd like me and you're into MIDI stuff, this is probably the video for you and you can stick around. If not, then you can, I don't know, find a different video. So Midi Realism is incredibly important to me. And it's not something I always focused on, but I remember when I met Kevin Kiner, the Clone Wars composer, in 2017 at a recording session. And I asked him what would he recommend that I really focus my chops on. And he said, make sure your productions sound great, that the mockups have to sound great. The days of having an okay mockup and being able to sell that are fading, really. And oftentimes what we do in the DAW is the finished product. So it's incredibly important to have good mockup chops and know how to program well. That importance is what led me to explore different methods of inputting music. I used to just have like a mod wheel on my keyboard. Then I upgraded to a fader, which I still use. And then I finally decided to explore the idea of this breath controller. The reason why I like this breath controller for many of the things that I program is, number one, I have two hands available to me when I play the keyboard. I can have this thing over my neck, actually play the keyboard, and then program. The other thing is that I can use my breath, which is an extension of me, to be able to program, and I find that so much more realistic and fluid than using a fader and trying to anticipate that. Let me kind of show you what I mean. So I have a flute pulled up here in Logic, and I'm going to use the fader to kind of do my best to make it feel expressive. Okay, not too bad. Now let me try a very similar line, or the same line if I can do it, and use the breath controller. Now, I'll note that I'm only using modulation in these demos. I did not use expression. I did not use vibrato. So here's the one with the fader. And you can see kind of, it's got these arcs that go through. And then if we look at the breath controller, you'll see it kind of looks a little crazy. But what I'm doing here is I'm re-articulating. So ba 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 da 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 da. And that sort of articulation really makes a difference. Again, just to A-B them, here's the first one. And then the second. Now, often what I'll do is actually go in and draw just to correct a couple things. So in this case, maybe I don't want quite this much variety. So I might actually go in and draw with the pencil tool like this and get maybe something a little more smoother. But the breath controller has given me a good idea of what I'm actually trying to achieve. And I just find that, for me personally, using my breath is the best way to accomplish that. Now, this is something I love about the breath controller, and it applies particularly for the winds as well as the brass. The same kind of concept applies. For strings, this is where it's kind of, it depends. You know, sometimes it works for strings, but the way that strings articulate tends to be long, slurred phrases as opposed to kind of these punctuated lines. And so it doesn't translate quite as well when it comes to strings. Just to demonstrate that, I'm pulling up a violin here. And we'll do the kind of same passage with a violin. So it's like, it's okay. Now, same thing with the fader. You see, we get that nice kind of slurred thing when it comes to the fader, whereas the breath, when I punctuate these lines, it just doesn't translate quite as well. So that's one point I want to make, is that this is not just like a, you know, you use it or you don't use it at all. These are all tools, and I use them for different reasons and in different instances. I really like this when it comes to things that involve breath. The other perk that I really like, by the way, is that I can actually get an idea of when phrases should breathe, which is extremely helpful and a very common pitfall that mockup creators fall into, which is not giving the instruments an opportunity to breathe. Now, something I also really like about the Tech Control Breath Controller is this programmable menu here. This allows me to kind of customize how I want this arc to look as I play, so I can control basically the sensitivity and the bending. So as I blow, you can see it's registering where it actually is hitting in terms of the velocity, or I guess the modulation technically. I can also reprogram what I want it to be sent to, modulation, vibrato, etc., but I just use it for modulation. So I can adjust all these parameters here, as well as like the bending. I can make it harder for me to actually play the higher modulation. So that's me blowing pretty hard in there. You can also do something with this, which I really like, which is you can unscrew this valve here. And as I unscrew it, it's releasing air, which makes it a little harder for me to play. If you notice, I have to blow harder. I kind of actually personally prefer it like this, so that all of my breath is going towards the breath controller. I don't want to pass out while I'm playing. The other thing I figured I'd touch on this video is just how I actually use this as a tool, like how I learned how to perform using this breath controller. It's not excessively complicated. It's, I think, pretty intuitive because you're just using your breath. But I try to think of long phrases. So if I was breathing this out loud, maybe if I'm playing a line like this, right? I'll think of how I'd actually want to sing this. So there's kind of an arc that happens naturally in there, and I want to make sure I articulate that when it comes to the breath. Now, you hear I'm kind of articulating a little bit, ba, 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 ba. I could just hold a line out, and I don't have to get every note, so it could be... That feels a little bit more fluid because I'm actually just exhaling as opposed to pushing my breath out in different ways. Really, the best way you can improve your MIDI programming, whether you're using a breath controller or faders, is to listen to real instrumentalists, listen to how they perform, and even better, play yourself. Play an instrument that you already know how to play, or learn a new one if you don't know how to play one. Thinking like a musician, each musician that is playing a part, as opposed to you just programming a line and drawing to the best of your ability, that's what's going to set you apart in terms of your mockups and make it sound more realistic, because these are real players if you choose them to be. That's really it. Bit of a shorter video today, but I figured that people were interested in what this is, and now I can direct them to this video so they know. So if you enjoyed this video, you can leave a like, subscribe for more, and if you want to support me, you can buy me a coffee in the video description. Thanks as always for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.